All right. Hello and welcome to the Tscharner Conservancy Parkland show. We are talking about the Parklands and in particular about bicycling in the Parklands, along the Parklands, to the Parklands. Actually, we both bicycled here today.
Yes.
So this is about bicycling, and we have the expert to talk about bicycling in Boston, in Cambridge, along the river. And I'm very happy to let you know about our guest today. It's Nicole Freedman. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And Nicole has been absolutely instrumental in making biking in Boston and in other places a more fun place, a safer place. And we'll be talking about a particular way to bicycle along the river, to bicycle in Boston, how you can get a bike, how you can find your way around, and what she has been doing for the last few years for the city of Boston. So Nicole, let's start with what you've been doing in Boston and how that will eventually also affect Cambridge, because most of our live viewers here are from Cambridge, but the river is not too far, not too deep. So tell us of how you got started, and then I'd like you to talk about the Hubway program in particular, and bicycling along the river.
Sure. So I work for Mayor Menino in Boston, and for the last 4 years, since 2007, I've worked on everything related to bikes. So some of our key accomplishments include installing 52 miles of bike lane, and when I started the job, we did not have any miles of bike lane.
Yeah, and do you know how many there are in Cambridge by any chance?
I do not. 51.
That's a
One less than Boston.
Well, that's the challenge. We will find out. I'm sure it's a smaller city, but there are quite a few in Cambridge.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we've installed 850 racks. We have a community bike program that is one of the models across the country for ensuring equity with the bike programs. And most recently, the mayor launched the New Balance Hubway bike share system based on third-generation bike share systems from around the world. And it's been tremendously successful in Boston. We had, in our first season, 141,000 trips and 3,700 members. We opened March 15th with the soft launch, April 1st with our hard launch. And we now have had 26,000 trips already this season.
Already since April.
26,000.
So we're only a few days into it and you already have 26,000
And
rides.
our membership is up to 5,300. And I think one thing that's very exciting is this year it's expanding to Cambridge, Brookline, and Somerville. And when it expands there, it becomes a true regional transportation system. And it's fantastic in Boston, but when you can take that bike across the river and all over, it's just that much more powerful.
Since not everybody really knows what the Hubway system is, I have a picture here of you and the mayor launching it, and so we're going to have that picture here of it's
Probably want to zoom out.
We might have to zoom out a bit here. Zoom out, and that is you and Mayor Menino.
Yeah. So that was April 3rd, the day the mayor kicked off the bike share system for season 2.
All right.
And it was a fantastic event. We had hundreds of cyclists there, all members. And the Hubway team, the New Balance Hubway team, presented a bike to the mayor that said, "The car is no longer king," because that's been the mayor's motto as he's worked to transform Boston into a true world-class cycling city.
Now, not everybody knows really what the Hubway system is. So I actually pulled up here the website of Hubway. Maybe you know obviously how to maneuver around, but if somebody doesn't know what the Hubway system is, can you explain that a bit better?
I think I can, absolutely. So it's a third generation bike sharing system.
So third generation doesn't mean for people just over 65.
No. But what it means to be third generation is the system is fully automated, and the bikes are designed for shared use and outdoor use. So you have two ways to ride a bike. You can either become a member, and you would sign up online on the website that we just showed. And membership right now is $50. So for $50, you can have a membership that lasts an entire year, 12 months, and every trip is free once you become a member, so long as they're under 30 minutes. And why we have the 30-minute rule is these are about sharing bikes. So if you wanted to take the bike to a Red Sox game, for instance, you'd actually put it in one of the Fenway Park or the Red Sox Foundation stop in Kenmore Square, leave the bike there during the game, and take a different bike on the way back. And you could have 3, 4, 5 people using that same bike while you're at the game.
Yeah, yeah. So let's look at that website. So how would somebody, if they go to the Hubway website, how would they get started on finding out, for instance, where locations are? How would they? So do
if you go to the station map,
yeah,
and you click on that, and your internet's a little slower than you want. That's a list of all the stations in Boston right now.
Yeah.
And you can see we're in the downtown area, the Back Bay, we're in Roxbury, a little bit into the Seaport, Fenway, Kenmore, Longwood, and Alston, Brighton.
Yeah.
And at any point you can actually click on one of the stations and see if there are bikes available. So this one has 5 bikes available and 5 empty docks.
Oh, so that means if you want to drop a bike off, there is space, because that's important.
Exactly.
Or if you want to pick one up. So let's look at some of the locations along the Charles River.
We don't want to look at that one.
All right.
So we actually have a couple along the Charles right now that get a lot of use. This one is Charles Circle, right at the footbridge. And clearly there's space available and docks available.
So for instance, if you go against the Charles Circle, that would be an easy ride for people to come over with the Red Line.
Absolutely.
And then they hop on a bike, and they might go anywhere in Boston they want and drop it off someplace else.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got a lot right along the river. This is the Esplanade at Beacon Street. This is Mass Ave and Beacon Street. And then we follow the river, so we have some right here, Western Ave and Soldiers Field Road, and the Harvard Stadium. So we're already right out there. This is North Station, also right along the river. And one thing we did is, the plan has always been to make a regional system. We've been working a lot with the Metropolitan Area Planning Council and cities of Cambridge and Somerville. But you can see where we have our stations. We're right along this border with Cambridge and the river, so that the second Cambridge and Somerville have their stations, it's really easy to just go right across the river.
Yeah.
And the other thing we have is obviously we're in that Fenway, Kenmore, Longwood area, abutting Brookline. So again, we'll be able to get people into Brookline when Brookline comes on board.
So if somebody wants to sign on, what would they do?
Great question. If they want to sign on, they can just click join.
And then they fill out the form. Yeah.
And if you want, you can put your credit card number here for all your viewers. And then when you join, you have the option to purchase a helmet at low cost for $18.61. You sign a waiver. There's a safety video that everyone watches.
Yeah.
Click subscribe. And then the Hubway team, the New Balance Hubway team, will actually mail to you a little key that allows you to access all of the bikes.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this is a very exciting thing. Although I bike on my own bike, but I'm a member, because if, for instance, the weather is kind of iffy, I would take the Red Line over to Charles Circle.
Yep.
And then if it's not pouring, I get on a bike and I go to DCR, or I go to the State Transportation Building, and do my local ride that way.
You know what's amazing is when we first launched, we didn't have the stations right along the river permitted yet, and yet we saw so many bikes riding up and down the Esplanade path, and people just love to take the bikes out for use on the Esplanade and in the Emerald Necklace, and highlighting the parks is one of the great benefits of the system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, maybe we want to speak a little bit more about the Charles River, because you and I recently were in a meeting about bicycling along the Charles River.
Yes.
And as you know, we've been advocating to have it easier to bicycle on the pathway along the river, and particularly when you come to the bridges, so that you can go through the abutment of the bridge, like at the Elliott Bridge, so you don't have to fight the traffic over the bridge.
Yeah.
And you were in a meeting with Commissioner Tinlin, and so tell our viewers what your advocacy work was in there, and it was obviously very effective.
Well, I think for the mayor, the bike program is about getting everyone on a bicycle. And that's not just people in spandex, but new people, young people, old people, women, men, kids. And one thing that is so critical to the system is that off-road network, and it is the paths. And we know two things about the cyclists that don't ride, but could ride, or the people that don't ride. One is they're scared of traffic. And two, people want to bike because it's the fastest way to work. They want a nice experience. So we see a totally different level and type of cyclist along the Charles River path. But again, they're scared of driving. So the city is in support of the proposal to have underpasses under the Charles River, so that at some of these key intersections,
not under the Charles River, under the bridges.
Under the bridges,
All
yeah.
right, through the abutment, yes.
And there's a few advantages, but one is you have a contiguous route without stopping, and that's very appealing to a lot of cyclists, to be able to get from point A to point B as efficiently as possible without stopping. It's a superhighway, which is really...
Explain that concept. The word superhighway, you would think this is normally used for cars,
Yeah.
but you speaking of a superhighway for bicyclists.
We call it a bike superhighway, and a lot of the best practices for bike planning that you see in the United States have come from other countries, but this bike superhighway is a concept that's gaining in popularity here in the United States. And the whole concept is, if you can minimize the number of stops for a cyclist, and also just like a driving highway, and also keep people flowing from point A to point B, and keep a direct route, people will bike. And that's exactly what this is doing. The second you add these underpasses, you can get from Watertown, Waltham, right into downtown with hardly any stops at all. It's very quick. The number two reason I think the underpasses are so important is just safety. You know, if we can keep cyclists and pedestrians from having to cross these really challenging intersections, it works better for the drivers, for the cyclists, and for the pedestrians.
Now, explain a little bit more. You said this, it's an intriguing term, this third generation. I guess you refer to that because other cities have done it earlier, but you kind of learned from it. So
Yeah.
what have you learned from other cities? Where did it start, and what have you learned, and
Yeah.
what's so much better about your system?
So the first generation system, I think it was Portland, Oregon, and we always joke that it was a bunch of hippies, and they put out a few hundred yellow bicycles. They painted them yellow and said, well, no one will steal these. These are bright yellow. And 3 days later, they were all gone. So that didn't work. So the second generation came along, and that was Amsterdam, and they said, you know, we're much smarter than those Americans, and you had to put in a little coin, and you'd get your bike, and apparently you would then flip it into a canal, because who really cares about getting a coin back? So the third generation system really revolutionized bike share, and what the third generation does is it's attached to your credit card. So if you don't return that bike, you will be charged. These bikes come back. And in a sense, the system that we have in Boston, the New Balance Hubway system, is really what I would call Generation 3B. And the equipment we have is purchased by a company, Public Bike Systems, in Montreal.
Maybe we can pull that up. That does, unfortunately, the overhead doesn't work. But maybe do you have a picture? I think on the Hubway side of the bike.
Well, that's a good question. Let's see what we have.
Here we go.
And these are Generation 3B. The stations are actually fully modular, mobile, and solar. So we're not digging into the electrical grid. It's not a construction project to put these stations down. And the bikes are designed for outdoor use. Let's see if there's better photos.
All right.
You'd think I would know this, but I don't.
Well,
there we go. There's a nice picture.
We have a whole row of them.
Yeah.
And they have some wonderful features, like they have a very sturdy basket in the front.
Yeah.
And adjustable seats.
Yeah. You could. So the stations themselves. When I say they're modular, that means that you can have 50 bikes in a rack. You could have 10 bikes, 100. It depends on the popularity. We can move the stations quite easily in case we get the wrong locations. The bikes are designed for outdoor use, which means you could probably take a sledgehammer to the frame. It'll hold up. The tires, if you look at them, they're a little burlier, and they're pretty much puncture-proof. Seat can go up and down but can't be stolen. All of the components are not standard components. There's no value on sort of a market to steal
So
them.
you wouldn't steal a wheel to apply to your
Yeah.
bike because it couldn't be transferred to your
Yeah,
bike.
it wouldn't make sense. And the basket could actually hold the two of us combined. We could, sit in that basket and have a comfy ride. Don't do it though. That's probably not safe.
Yeah, yeah. And how do you know how do you move the bikes around? Obviously, there is we know that there are empty slots and there are full slots. So how do they get adjusted?
So there's a team that we've hired, our operations team with Hubway, is one of their functions, in addition to repairing the bikes, is rebalancing. And for instance, bikes go downhill, but they'll never go uphill. But we also know at commute hours in the morning, they're going to come from the train stations and they'll go into downtown. And then in the evening, they go from downtown back out to the train stations. So the rebalancing team prepares the night before and they'll empty out the downtown area, fill up the train stations. And they actually do another run around 8 a.m. After the first commuters came in. For the second wave of commuters.
Yeah, yeah.
But throughout the day and on the weekends, it actually self-balances quite a bit. So it's only a small percentage of the bikes that ever get rebalanced.
Yeah. Now, the system is going to expand to Cambridge. Can you tell us a little bit about what the plans are for Cambridge?
Well, I can't tell you too much. I don't know much. They're looking at launching, obviously, this summer. And for the user, completely seamless experience. So you could take a bike at Harvard Square, get a coffee in Central Square, take it over to a Red Sox game or the Lowe's movie theater, and then it might start raining. You leave the bike there. You might take a cab back, pop in a subway, and take another bike later. And as long as each trip is under 30 minutes, it's completely free.
So, although it's a different system, but it's the same system. It's the same system. So if it's the same credit card,
everything's the same.
Is everything the same?
Yeah, it's the Hubway system. Instead of 61 stations, we'll have about 90 stations. Same operator, same team, same website. One system and your pass is good everywhere.
Now, have other people already copied your 3B generation? Who is next? Who is next doing that? Where has it left its imprints?
The equipment is purchased from a company, Public Bike Systems Corporation in Montreal. The same equipment is used in DC, in Melbourne, Australia. New York actually just contracted with the same team that we're using, so it'll be the same equipment in New York City. London has a variation of the equipment produced by the same exact company as well. So this company is also, doing a lot of the cities and obviously Montreal's system as well.
Tell us a little bit of how you got involved in that whole process.
Well, I remember 2008, the mayor looked at Paris and saw what bike share did, and it transformed the city. They had in Paris 54 million trips taken by bike in 2 years. And 54 million, those are, that changed the city overnight. And the mayor said, we can do that here. And he had me look at bike share at that time, and it hadn't come to the United States yet. It hadn't been in North America. And a lot was, well, how do we do this? What's the business model? Where do you get this equipment? How do you who runs a system, and what does it mean to run a system?
Yeah, well, we're very grateful to Mayor Menino and to you to have brought that here. I think already there's been an enormous difference. There is this saying about there is safety in numbers.
Yeah.
I think the more people on the road, the more people are careful.
Yes.
And that makes a big difference.
Yeah. And we've seen in Boston, we've seen a 50% increase in ridership. We're above average for the United States, well above average. Cambridge is actually, I think, in the top 5 for ridership in the country as sort of a percentage of all trips made by bike.
Yeah. So Boston is getting there too.
Absolutely.
And obviously crossing the river should become easier.
Yes.
Because they are going to be, as the bridges are being redone, there should be some not only bike lanes, but actually some designated areas that make it safer for bicycles to cross. So that will help. So we're coming to the end of the program, and I just wanted to let you know that in case you missed the beginning of the show, that you can actually find that on on YouTube, and it's also in a way a sad moment because you're going to leave Boston and the Boston area, and I'm very sad about that.
Well, thank you.
And it has been wonderful to have you in town. We all know that her nickname is the Czar of bicycling, the bicycle czar. So you're going to go further north.
Yeah, I'm going to be executive director at Maine Hudson Trail up in Kingfield, Maine, which is quite a change. There's a stoplight about 24 miles away. But I am confident that the mayor is so committed to biking in Boston, and the program will continue to thrive.
Yeah, well, it's wonderful that the mayor is committed. And I know that people who bicycle are quite committed to bicycling. And a lot of bicyclists have been very supportive of our efforts to make the pathway along the river more attractive, and have helped us financially. We worked on repaving the pathway along the river.
And thank you.
So that's wonderful. So I want to thank you for what you've done for Boston and Cambridge and for the river to make bicycling more attractive. And I want you all to go to the Hubway website and sign up and get your bike and get your joy of riding around town, and life will be very different and much enjoyable. So thank you again for coming today, and good luck with your plans in Maine, and I hope you'll come back kind of once every year just to see the progress we made with the program installed in Cambridge.
Oh, absolutely. I'm looking forward to it.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, so I'll bring you back now to the Hubway site so you can find that online and sign up. And if you want to find out more about the Charles River Conservancy's advocacy, the website is thecharles.org, and there you find information about the underpasses, about there are now 28 elected officials that have supported it, and 36 other advocacy organizations that are in support of that. So I hope you'll lend your support and start bicycling and become an advocate yourself. And thank you very much, Nicole, for being here today.
Thank you.